Hi, welcome back. It's your bestie B. Should that be like my new tagline or something? I want a tagline. If you don't think that's the vibe, let me know in the comments. What should I say when I come on? Because I want something cute. Anyways, as usual, guys, the title probably threw you off. I know. We're always doing something weird. You know, over here, we like to keep it interesting. And I really wanted to talk about anxiety today. This year was the worst I don't like saying my anxiety, and I'll get to why I don't like saying that. And it's still like something I have to remember, but I have had a really difficult time dealing with anxiety this year. I've had a lot of life changes in the past year, from getting married to moving to hitting different milestones within my career. There's really no surprise to why that happened. At the beginning of the year versus now, I am in a totally different place. The reason I wanted to do this video is simply to share my experience. Big disclaimer here, I am just a girl on the internet sharing her story. By no means am I saying this is going to help you too. If it resonates with you, great, but I'm also not guaranteeing success for anyone. I really encourage you, if you struggle with anxiety, to work with a professional, whether that's a therapist, a counselor, even if that's just, listening to podcasts that are run by professional psychiatrists or counselors that talk, because that's free, I just recommend you also get the perspective of a professional, and that is not me. So now that we got that disclaimer out of the way, I would love to tell you guys my personal story. So a little bit of context with what I was dealing with this year in terms of anxiety. I heard the term crippling anxiety, but I had never dealt with it until this year, where I actually experienced panic attacks. I think the word panic attack can be like thrown around sometimes in context, like, oh my God, like I'm gonna have a panic attack. And I'll be first to admit, like I was throwing that around like it was candy. And then it happened and I was like, yo, I'm gonna stop saying that when that's not true, because it's terrifying. And if you've experienced it, I hate that for you. And I'm so sorry that you have, but I completely understand. AJ has walked in on me having a panic attack before. It was heart racing. I was involuntarily hyperventilating, like, and I thought I was dying. I literally thought I was dying. I was like, I need to go to the hospital. I am absolutely freaking out. It's only been like super bad with the hyperventilating like one time. However, I've had many episodes where I feel like it's about to happen and I get really close to it, and it's almost, in my opinion, just as bad as the full-blown episode, because if that does happen, like obviously I can't relax, but it is really scary to me, and it's a very big mental battle of losing control. And I think, I don't know, it's so hard to put into words unless you've been there, but just know I have dealt with a lot of things in my life, but I've never been that afraid of anything except for anxiety. To any of you that deal with that, just know that you're not alone. I know that doesn't really help, but sometimes knowing that there's someone that understands what you're going through can be a big relief, to know that you are not crazy, and that there are plenty of us going through this for different reasons. Look at our world. It's kind of shit. So it's pretty understandable if you are dealing with anxiety to any level. And I give you my example on the extreme side, but obviously anxiety is on a spectrum. So whether you are dealing with anxiety where you kind of get butterflies in your stomach, or maybe you are hyperventilating, wherever you are, just know that your experience is valid. So when I had kind of had enough of when I had enough of the anxiety episodes, I really got tired of experiencing the same thing over and over again, wondering, why can't I get a grip on what's happening? Why do I keep putting myself through this? Because I felt like I had control. And obviously that's not necessarily true, but one of my toxic traits is that I love to blame myself. So I'm sitting here thinking, like, how can I get a grip on this? And I think it's ironic because the whole time I'm trying to control the experience of anxiety, and I am making it worse by doing so. You know how in the jealousy video, if you didn't see that, check it out. But in the jealousy video, I talked to you guys about how your feelings are indicators of something deeper. I stand by that when it comes to anxiety. Anxiety, in my experience, is basically a mirror to my fears. That could be super obvious to some of you, but it wasn't that obvious obvious to me. I thought, oh, I just get nervous when I do certain things. Oh, I just am really bad with change. No, it was those things, but it was so much deeper than those things. You know, looking at this year, I'm like, I have never in my life experienced anxiety on this level. Like, what's going on? And then I'm looking at what's happened previously, and I'm like, oh wow, I got married, I moved, I literally had a lot of shit go down this year within my career that nobody knows about. And I'm trying to hold it all together, and I'm wondering why I'm freaking out. Of course I'm freaking out. I have no outlet. I have nothing to help me get rid of this feeling that's going on in a healthy way. But also, I wasn't consciously aware that I had these fears until I sat with myself and I sat with my thoughts, and I really started to dissect when I got anxious and what made me anxious. For example, around the time I got married and a little bit after, I started to notice more anxiety, not necessarily panic attacks, just very anxious, like repetitive thoughts would go through my head. And I talked to my therapist about it, and she's like, you know, Bria, like getting married is a big deal. And I'm like, yeah, but in the movies, you know, everyone is just only like so excited, and that was me, but also it was coupled with anxiety. And I just had never seen anyone be super nervous about marriage because, well, one, I didn't have enough friends who got married, but I guess we just weren't talking about it if we were. But I'll be the first to tell you, I was scared shitless. And of course I know I love AJ. Of course I was excited to be married, but what it really came down to was this underlying fear that I don't know if I'm capable of being a good wife. I am a child of divorce. My parents, interestingly enough, they got back together, but that doesn't change the fact that for a few years of my life, they were divorced. And I was very young. It was, you know, during that impressionable time in my life. And so my parents have drastically evolved and changed, and I'm so happy for them. But that had a really big impact on me. So when it came to my own marriage, I was scared because I was, little baby Bria is like, we don't want to go through something like that again. That was horrible. Like, you know, being split between homes and seeing my parents not agree and not get along sometimes. It was really hard. So I really had to be honest with myself that like, hey, there's some trauma around marriage for me that I have not addressed. I don't think I had ever really talked about it out loud until I said something to my therapist. This is the first time we really went in on how difficult it was to experience divorce. And I know if any of you have gone through it yourself, you probably know it's not fun. So now that I'm understanding why I have these fears, it's so much easier to recognize where the anxiety was coming from. So another example of how I kind of pieced together where my triggers with anxiety were when we moved to Dallas. You know, again, another thing I should have been really excited about, but when after it happened, I kind of went through this weird blue period. Not blue, I was just really, really anxious all the time. I was also a lot closer to my family. I would see them a lot more. Being around my family more had stressed me out a little bit more because I was more intertwined in their day-to-day problems. Whereas sometimes they didn't tell me everything because I used to live in a whole other state. So, you know, kind of out of sight, out of mind. I didn't realize how many problems they have on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not saying they're dramatic, but they kind of are. So me being the person that I am, I'm a fixer. Like, I'm wanting to not only fix myself, but also help my parents. And what it did was it just brought on a lot more stress than I was used to. So the anxiety went through the freaking roof. And eventually I find myself in this very unhealthy place of feeling like something bad was gonna happen to my family if I didn't do this for them or do that for them. And I created these very interesting thought patterns that weren't justified by any means, but I felt like I could not let go of them. And so looking at that, talking to my therapist about that too, recognizing that I cannot control everything. I only have so little control, but like these big changes, whenever this massive change would happen in my life, like the move, I would need something to control or fix. And this is a pattern that we've addressed throughout my life. And I don't know necessarily why that is, but I'm not good with change. Usually, it's crazy, you guys. Usually when a big change happens, I get physically sick. And sure enough, right around the time we moved, I I got sick. Like another example is when I went to college, right before I went to college, I got sick. I had like some weird appendicitis or abdomen thing going on, had to go to get an ultrasound like the first week I moved into college because I internalized stress so heavily when there is a change. And I'm looking for something to control, to feel like I'm in control again when these big changes happen. So when I moved, it was projected onto my family. I know that was kind of all over the place, but does that make sense? We really had to go in, and that's why it was so helpful to work with a therapist who was like, yeah, basically like we just need to go back to your childhood. I swear, like everything is tied to your baby self, basically. So now that you have a little more context, this is where it gets interesting. So through working on anxiety and talking to someone, but also doing a lot of inner work, basically these fears, like I said, oftentimes they go back to that little baby version of who you are. So up until a certain point this year, I visualized anxiety as like this big, scary monster. And I'm telling you, this one thing completely shifted my perspective with what anxiety is. And that was to look at anxiety as your child self. So what do I mean by that? When there's a fear that comes up or when I have anxiety, I will literally talk to my inner child like the child that they are. Because a lot of the times your anxiety is lying to you. You've seen that cute little Pinterest graphic. Your anxiety is lying to you. It is. So like a child would, talk to that child. Stop attaching to it and being like, these are my adult thoughts. They are not. Most of them, I can guarantee you, are rooted in shit that happened to you when you were way young or some trauma that you still need to process, right? So that little baby version of whoever you are or who I am is just looking out for you and is just trying to protect you. And I think it did so much personally for me to come from it from love and be like, oh, that's so cute that you care. We're safe, baby Bria. We're fine. We're gonna be just fine. Just because this happened doesn't mean it's gonna happen to us. Like I literally almost in a condescending way, I kind of gaslight those fearful thoughts. And I'm like, oh, you don't think you're gonna be a good wife? Why would you think that? You learned so much from watching your parents get divorced. You don't have to make those mistakes. Okay, it's like kind of dark, right? But also it helps me so much to be like, what am I freaking out over? You know, like you are not your experiences. You have free will. You have free power to create the narrative for your life that you want. It doesn't matter what your parents did. It doesn't matter what mistakes you've made in the past. You are not that. You define what happens from this moment forward. So if you want to stay stuck in whatever cycle you saw within your family or your past self, then that's okay if you choose to do that, but know that it's a choice and that nothing can stop you from moving forward or breaking whatever cycle that is, okay? So my little baby self just really doesn't want to experience any kind of divorce again. And God, I love baby Bria for reminding me of that. So I have to let her know that we're good. We chose a person who understands that we have these fears and still loves us through it, and vice versa. I'm gonna love baby Bria through those fears because that is not realistic. And I've got to talk to those thoughts like it's not realistic. So when it comes to me feeling like, oh, you know, I'm scared of this within my career or that, I gotta talk to those fears and those thoughts like they are baby Bria, because they are, okay? When I could see those thoughts and feelings as just a little innocent child, one, I was able to detach from it, and I love detaching from my feelings and not becoming them, as you saw with the jealousy video. That really helped me move on from it and be like, okay, this is a passing thought. Whereas in the past, I would just really grip onto these ideas and then fixate, and that's when the panic attack would start. It was like, here it is, I got the match right here, I can light this up and make it explode right now. But instead, when I do this like little process with myself where I just like talk to myself and I'm like, you know what, baby Bria, like thank you for saying that, but like we don't need that energy right now. When I talk to those thoughts like the babies that they are, it is so much easier for me to move on. And I don't end up like creating this big fire in my mind anymore. I don't let it go that deep. And that is really hard to do. I'm making it sound so easy, but this has been like almost an entire year of work for me with the help of professionals. Again, might I add, like, I don't want this to sound as easy as it is, because it was not. And I understand the struggle of being like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna be better from this, but please understand you will be better. You are not your anxiety, and you can move past these thoughts too. It takes practice. It's very hard, but you can do this. So pivoting just a little bit on the topic of anxiety, I also wanted to talk about how I use anxiety. Not only did I make it like my best friend, like now, okay, anxiety can be looked at as like little baby Bria, and we can be nicer to her and we don't have to attach to her, but also I started to question anxiety. Rather than just become it, I started to say, why is this happening right now? Let's do a little self-reflection here, okay? Another reference to corny Pinterest graphics, but have you seen the one that says, gut feelings are guardian angels? It's super cute. We should all get it on a shirt. It's corny, but it's true. Another reason I think it's important to pay attention to anxiety, and this is not in every case, this is in some cases. There have been times where I was super anxious about a situation or a person, and I could not understand why. I say this because you guys know I am a really intuitive person, and I'm still learning how to harness that little superpower, because a lot of the times I'm in denial that I get things on a soul level before it actually happened. It freaks me out, right? And I know some of you are on this level too. If you're not, that's okay, don't worry, but I think we all were given the gift of intuition. We were all given the gift of gut feelings. It's how open and receptive you are to it. And I'm very receptive to mine. I'm just still trying to have a little more confidence with it. For example, I used to work with someone, this is years ago. You're not gonna be able to guess, so don't try to, but I had a manager that every time she would text me, I would have this terrible feeling in my stomach. Like physically, my stomach would turn every time she would text me. I'm thinking, why do I feel this way about her? I felt bad because looking at the situation we had, technically, this woman started to help me make more money than I ever had in my career, technically, okay? But there was still something off about my situation with her, and I couldn't figure out what it was until some things came to light. And I'm gonna leave this really, really short. But this woman was stealing from me. This woman was taking PR packages as me, impersonating me, having stuff sent to her as me. Also, some things that were happening where I would send in my content to a brand and she wouldn't give it to the brand. So the brand thought that I just wasn't turning my work in. It is the job of your manager to facilitate that process. And so I'm thinking, oh, like I turned this in 2 weeks ago. Well, I started getting messages on Instagram and brands were like, hey, Bria, we just want to check in. We didn't ever receive your work. And I'm like, that's really weird because I finished it a month ago and I turned it in to my manager. So what I'm saying is, on a very soul level, my higher self, or whatever you want to call it, knew what the fuck was up and was like, bestie, we have a problem. Bestie, we have a problem. Every time I talked to this woman, you guys, I was like, oh. But it was so hard because to my face on the phone, she was, oh my gosh, you got this deal. Let's sign this contract. Let's do this. But I would always leave our phone conversations kind of like, yeah, interesting, even after getting good news. So what I'm saying is your anxiety might not be for nothing. Sometimes your anxiety might be telling you something that you don't quite understand yet. It's nothing to attach to. It's nothing to fear, but it's just something to be cautious about and maybe like listen to those feelings and just be a little slower to react. Be a little more aware of what's going on between you and the situation or you and that person. Anxiety doesn't always have to be bad. Just like we made jealousy in the previous chatty video a positive thing, I think if we learn to see the anxious feeling as something we need to just observe a little more, we wouldn't be so afraid of it and we wouldn't fear it as much. Now, this is a specific instance with anxiety. Obviously, not all anxiety experiences are like this, but I will say there have been a big chunk of them recently for me that if I do get anxious, I usually end up being right, that something about the situation was off. And it really doesn't make always the person a bad person, like the example I gave you. Sometimes you're just not aligned with like the situation and your gut's trying to tell you, hey, this isn't for us. And that's okay. We want to feel peace. We want to feel ease with things because that's when you get into flow with work, with relationships. When there's all this forced action happening and you have this anxiety underneath that, listen to that. It's okay to let it go and not push and force everything in your life. It honestly will make everything so much easier for you. And when I listen to those emotions and feelings, I feel like I attract the things that I actually want and get the best of the best because I'm making room for the best and I'm not trying to make something work that shouldn't work. Something else that has helped me move past anxiety is reframing the way I speak about it. You might have noticed I caught myself a couple times saying my anxiety. That's something I'm deliberately choosing to say a lot less of and not say that because I don't want to own it. I don't want it to be like my thing because I think it's so easy, especially now, just the way we kind of talk in today's culture, we really emphasize like panic attacks and being stressed out and losing it. But you guys know I'm a big believer that your words are spells. So I've been very careful to just not say it out loud anymore, not think that, not say that, and switch around the words a little bit. So for example, instead of saying anxiety through a conversation, I'll say I'm excited. And I believe it was Kiana Naomi, who gave me that bit of advice. I could be wrong, but I think it was her. Physiologically, being excited and being anxious are the same thing. Accelerated heart rate, butterflies, sweating, they're kind of the same thing, right? So why not add a more positive spin on it? Because if I'm in a situation like specifically social events, those typically bring out anxiety for me. So instead of being on the way to an event and being like, oh, I'm so anxious, I'm so nervous, and just like sitting there and thinking about it the entire ride to the event, I'll be like, yeah, I'm just really excited. I'm really excited. Yeah, I'm really excited right now. That is kind of how I'll reframe it. And I feel like I don't create negativity around whatever I'm about to do. Instead, because I've changed the verbiage to be a little more positive, it's just something small that does a big thing for me that might help some of you out. So next time you're feeling a little bit anxious, just change it and be like, in the moment, be like, I'm excited. Like I got butterflies. Like I'm really excited about this. Just watch how saying that like tricks your brain and you can kind of relax and then enjoy whatever experience you're about to have a little more. Now, I definitely don't want to downplay how a lot of the improvement I've had with being less anxious, or should I say less excited, is I have worked my ass off this year with my lifestyle. And maybe I haven't shared so much of that. And if you guys want to see, like really go there with me on what I've been doing, I am so happy to share it with you. I'm still in the middle of that journey. So like, just let me know if that's something you want. I can start like documenting things, but I gotta be real with you. Like I was treating my body like garbage. And a lot of that came from the pandemic, just really coping with food, coping with a lot of things, okay? So my body forced me this year to get serious. There was a point where I had to go to the ER. Some of you might have seen that on my stories. I'll put a picture here if you remember that, but I was forced to figure it out. And after you see that hospital bill, you gonna be like, you know what? That Tex-Mex was not all that, okay? The enchilada with the margarita and the ceviche and the dulce leche, it was all right, but it wasn't worth all this. Bestie, no, that was somebody's salary, okay? Y'all know I'm self-employed. I cannot go to the hospital. I had to get it together. And I've been saying, oh, I'm gonna. Well, gonna got. I had to hurry up and gonna. I finally did it. So this year I have a nutritionist. I've been working on my gut health. And what a lot of us don't talk about is your emotions are also within your gut. Your gut produces a lot of your serotonin. If you are not good on a biological level, if you're not taking care of your body, it's absolutely gonna come out in your emotions. It's gonna come out in so many ways. So what you put in, you wanna put the high vibrating foods into you, the best possible things that are going to give you a return. Yes, I would love to gorge on Taco Bell with you at 3 a.m, but I know what that shit is gonna do to me on a mental level, so it makes it not worth it for me anymore to do these things often. Yes, every now and then we'll have a grand old time, but for the most part, I've had to really decide to change the way I eat, change my drinking habits, and I've been rewarded for that. Emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, I have seen the reward of prioritizing my my health. I know some of you already know this, but I think you needed the reminder. And if you're like, dang, that's me, stop waiting. Now is the time to get serious about your health, because if you don't have your health, you have nothing. So let me know if you guys want to do more of a lifestyle change video. I won't go into it in this video, but just know putting in the work to improve my health has flourished in ways that I cannot explain to you. I am more energetic. I am so much happier. I have a zest for life. I have a libido. I can't even begin to tell you all the things I've gotten from taking care of myself. And there is no amount of money that I could put on that. And I really hope all of you can experience that too. If you really find yourself in an anxious mood, another thing I recommend is brain dumping. Whether you take a journal and do this or do this in the notes app on your phone, I found it to be really effective for me. And I actually do mine right before bed, because for whatever reason, that's when I start to worry about the next day and like, oh, what do I have to do tomorrow, you know? So what I do is I just go on my notes app and I just type out everything as if nobody is ever gonna see it, because nobody is gonna see it. My fears, what is in my way right now mentally, things I'm worried about, upcoming projects that I'm nervous about, whatever it is, I get it out right then and there in that phone or jot it down. And then afterwards, rip it up or delete it. That is you energetically releasing all those little nagging things in your head, okay? You said it, now let it go. I think there's a lot of power in releasing stuff mentally, because what I've learned through healing myself this year is that we carry our emotions. We carry trauma in our bodies. What happens with anxiety and stress is it turns into disease. It turns into sickness. A healthy young person like myself should have not been getting as sick as I was at the start of the year, but I was, because I was holding on to a lot of things. And the second I started to release those things verbally, on paper, mentally, talking to therapists, the changes started to happen within my body, where I started to feel better again and like myself after 2 years of feeling like I would never be back in that place again. So release it through writing, speaking, typing, get it out and then destroy it, okay? Also, you can get these things out by moving. Get out, dance, sweat, release that stress out of your body so that it does not fester and become a part of you. Okay, and last but not least, therapy. I can't say it enough. I'm just gonna say it one more time, even though I've told you, talk to professionals. Therapy is incredible if you have the means to do that. There are so many programs that work with people who maybe don't have the income to support that. There are also options to even get that covered by insurance. Definitely look into your options if you think you need this. I will say too, finding the right therapist is a part of the equation. It's not always so easy. I've been through like 4 in the last year or 2, and you really have to find your perfect fit. You have to find someone that you can receive information from. Also, some therapists are very, I've had experiences where some of them were just very scripted, like, here's what we do in this situation, and it just felt not personal. I'm like, hi, like, I hate it here, and you know, I seriously need help, and it's like, okay, so here's a worksheet. I'm not a worksheet bitch, but if other people are, then that's great, but I'm not, and I kept saying that. So you have to also be an advocate for yourself in the kind of help you need and the kind of therapist you need. Make sure that you kind of do 1 or 2 sessions and let them know what your needs are. It's not just like get a therapist and it works. You kind of have to date around with your therapist and find the one that works for you. And I just wanted to say that because when I started to go to therapy, I didn't realize that I could kind of have more of a say in that. And a lot of them will be honest with you and say, hey, this is my approach. I don't think we'll be a good fit. And that's great. So you can find someone who is going to be a good fit. But in any instance with your health, your mental health, or your well-being, do not be afraid to speak up for what you need, okay? I'm so glad you guys joined me for this video. Like I said, I know that these aren't necessarily traditional methods, but these have worked really great for me and I just wanted to share them with you guys. I hope it helps some of you, or maybe you'll resonate with a few of these ideas or not. Regardless, if you have any tactics for dealing with anxiety, I would love to take a peek at those in the comments if you want to drop them down below. Otherwise, be sure to hit that notification bell and subscribe if you haven't, of course. Follow me on Instagram. I post a lot there day to day, and I'll see you guys next week.